Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. And today I am joined by a very special guest, Mr. Ryan Hill, who is the author of the Book of Bart series. Ryan, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, George.
Yeah, glad to have you. And today we are talking about a very interesting movie from 1980. It is Flash Gordon. That's right. This one was directed by Mike Hodges. And I got a lot to say about this, but I'm curious, Ryan, how far back do you go with this? Did you see this as a kid? Is this something you remember from back in the day?
It was good to revisit it. I hadn't seen it since I was a kid in the mid '80s, and honestly, and I mentioned this before the video. Like for me especially, it came back into consciousness when Seth MacFarlane sent it up in the Ted film, and it was I hadn't seen it since the mid '80s, so it was great to just see it with all that, and it was good to see it with all that time there to see how it aged and see if like what they went for they actually succeeded at doing, which I will say that like if they were going for like a cheesy cult sensation, they absolutely knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, I totally agree. I had a similar experience. So like I would have been like really young when this released, and we did not see it in the theaters or anything like that, but I caught it on TV later. I don't know,
Yep.
it's probably 8 or 9, something like that. And for me at that age, I was very easy to please. So if you gave me lasers and a spaceship, that's really all you needed to give me, and I was on board. And kind of like you, I saw it at that age, I absorbed it at that age, and I had memories of it, and then I never watched it again until this rewatching for this discussion. And
Right.
so I kind of had a very similar experience. Now, in my memory, like I just had fragments of what it was about. I remembered the football fight for some crazy reason, and I remembered the Birdman battle at
Oh,
the
yeah.
end are the two standouts. Did you have any standouts going into this recent watch, or
The Birdman and the Queen soundtrack. Those were the
yeah?
two things that stood out to the most, and then just the overabundance of red.
Ah, yeah.
You would think that I would be more okay with that because I went to North Carolina State University and I work there now too. And our colors are red and white. But those are the three things I remember: Birdman, Queen, and a whole lot of red.
Now, one thing that struck me on this rewatch, now I watched like the Blu-ray version, but the colors really popped, and like the golds and the reds, and there was always like light shining on these surfaces of these costumes, and they sparkled. And I remember
Yep.
thinking to myself, watching now, I'm like, you know, for a campy, 80s sci-fi thing, I think their color palette, their set design, they really went for that look. I think they were probably trying to emulate the comics from back in the day, but I don't know, it kind of worked for me. I don't know what you think of that. If it was a bit too much, or if it fit right for the mood.
I thought it was perfect for what they were going for, and when I watched it on Amazon in 4K, and it looks, the colors pop. It looks, you're right, it looks gorgeous, and I think it works perfectly for what they're trying to do. I will admit that once they really started getting into the costumes, my first thought was, oh, this is where the budget went, because it didn't really seem like it went into the actors apart from maybe Max von Sydow and Brian Blessed. And Timothy Dalton, of course, doing his best British Robin Hood impersonation. But no, it really worked for me, and looking at it now in 2023, it really is a great microcosm not only of the era in which it was made, but just campy sci-fi. And you can really tell watching it now, like you can see a lot of filmmakers have gotten inspiration from this, especially the Taika Waititi Thor films.
Mm-hmm.
They definitely have this kind of vibe, that Flash Gordon vibe to it, I think.
It almost feels to me like Max von Sydow and Timothy Dalton are playing it straight, and they're actually like they're trained Shakespearean actors or whatnot. They're playing
Yep.
it straight, and then you got Sam J. Jones just going for the camp, no doubt about it. And even Brian Blessed, and he seems to be leaning into that,
Yeah,
the over the top. Yes, let's do
I kind of felt
that.
like I had a couple of thoughts on that. Like for Max von Sydow, like I kind of felt like he was there in a class to join up, because all of a sudden this really campy dialogue takes on gravitas when you have somebody like Max von Sydow, saying the dialogue. That's kind of what I saw. But then he started doing these weird like hand twitches in the film. I don't know if you noticed that. And so I was wondering if that was just part of the character, or if he took the part just to kind of feed a cocaine habit. Because I did get the sense that there was a lot of cocaine ingested on the set of this film.
I wouldn't speculate, but I wouldn't be surprised either, because I mean this is definitely had that out there vibe to it for sure.
Yeah,
But
I'll speculate. I won't throw. I'm sorry. I'll speculate. I won't throw accusations out there. But I will speculate.
Right. It's all speculation. Yeah, we're not saying one thing or another. But watching it now as an adult, as I've so far removed from having seen it as a kid, I felt like when I was watching it, I just settled in, and I'm like, you know what? I like this. Like you said, I'm probably not going to throw it on, every 6 months or every year. When I'll probably go back to it in a few years just for fun. But it just kind of took me back to that time when effects were practical, sets were built. It wasn't all CGI. I'm a big guy with that. If you look at any of my other videos, and I like to go retro. A lot of reasons, but a big reason is I like the old school look and feel and vibe that they would do with these movies. Whereas like today, not against CGI, but it just seems like it's all that, and it just looks different. And so this movie had that scope and that look of those sets just look really good, and it put me in that just crazy fantasy world.
It's definitely a well-made film. Like I felt like the director did a good job. I really do think that it's, I think that the camp was intentional, and it's a well-made film. Like there are, not to sound too film school, snobbish, but it is the composition is very well composed. All the frames look good. It's a good-looking film, very good-looking film. And yeah, and that definitely holds up. And I'm like you, I prefer the old school effects. Even though you still know it's an effect, but it's still kind of like real on real, because you have a model on something else, like a painted thing, and so it's like real on real. Whereas with CGI, it's all just kind of fake. And yeah, and that could be just because of the period that we grew up in that we feel that way. But yeah, I'm with you. I definitely prefer the old school effects. I really do. And as far as what Flash Gordon was trying to accomplish, I mean, it's a big film what's going on in it. Like all these things are happening to the world. You have all these different planets that they're going to. And to pull it off with 1980, and to pull it off with kind of the flair that they did, is really impressive.
Yeah, I agree. And it had kind of an interesting history. Like I'm not like up on the history of Flash Gordon, because he wasn't really in the cultural zeitgeist when I was coming up, other than this movie. If you ask me about Flash Gordon, I immediately go to this movie, but he has a huge history going back to the 30s and the serials and all that. And then I find it kind of interesting how like George Lucas wanted to make Flash Gordon and writes and makes Star Wars. And then all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, we got to make a Star Wars because that's what people want. So you get all these sci-fi movies coming out around this time. This is a couple years later, and now we get Flash Gordon. And the thing that kicked off the ability to make this movie was the fact that the movie made in place of this was such a big hit. And I just find that kind of ironic and interesting how that kind of came full circle like that. Absolutely. Yeah, this didn't kick off a franchise like I think they wanted. I read somewhere where like all the actors were contracted to do like 2 or 3 movies. And of course, at the very end, you got the end question mark. They were really looking for a sequel, I imagine, but it didn't happen. And,
Well, Well, to give you an idea of the deep dive I did on the background of the film, I went to its Wikipedia page, and that's as deep as I went. And apparently Sam Jones left in post production, and a lot of his dialogue is dubbed over. Although I didn't notice a difference. I don't know if they just used like all if all of his dialogue was dubbed, or I don't know if you can tell like where it's actually Sam Jones and where it's the replacement. I couldn't tell. I had no idea until I read it afterwards.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I looked that up too, and the whole time I'm watching this, I was looking for the sync to miss, and it didn't. It's I
No.
would have never known if, like you, I had did a little bit of a check before I watched this. I would have had no idea that happened. But that's interesting that they can do. They can replace the voice of a whole performance, and it'd be pretty seamless. That's pretty cool, I think.
Yeah. That's how they I don't know if you're familiar with how they would make spaghetti westerns like Sergio Leone.
Hmm.
But they never did any audio on set. All of the audio that they did was in post production. And that's because, they were shooting in Italy and whatnot, and so they could easily dub over the Italian actors' voices with the American actors.
And another thing I found was that the director, he ended up going on to say like this was like the most expensive improvisational movie ever, because from his
Wow.
perspective, it felt like they were improving most of it. They had a script and everything, but he just basically said that they were making stuff up as they went. And that kind of goes to the scene at the end where Flash jumps up and goes, yeah, and they freeze frame on yeah, exactly. That was all improvised because they said they couldn't figure out the best way to end the story. They didn't know how. The little droid comes and is like, Earth is saved. They didn't know what to do. So Sam
We just
Jones
did.
just jumped up, and they're like, okay, that'll work. Hey,
Well,
why not? Yeah.
sometimes you shoot for 2 hours and then you just have to give up.
Exactly. But I don't know. I just find it all very fun. There were times in this movie where I just kind of laughed out loud, and
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know if they were going for that, but it gave me that effect, and why not? It's entertaining. like one example is when they're walking, the three of them, like a Zarkov and Dale and Flash are walking. They're following that orb, and it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz, where they were walking to meet the Oz.
Yeah.
The Wizard of Oz. It reminded
Yeah.
me of that. And then this lizard guy comes running out, and that droid's like, "Lizard man, stop! You can't escape!" And it just zaps him. And it's like some random lizard man out of nowhere comes walking into that
Yeah.
corridor that apparently leads to Ming. I just cracked up. This movie is full of little things like that, and I wonder if they were like trying to make us laugh, or if they thought that was dramatic. I don't know.
Now, in my excuse me, in my countless hours of research on the Wikipedia page, it did say that they were kind of going for more of a humorous vibe, but that also they actually had a really hard time nailing down the tone, because sometimes it would be serious, sometimes it would not be, and you can tell that. I mean, this is a PG film, but it would not be PG today if it were even made today. Like there are some very adult themes going on in it, and some of them are kind of scary.
Right.
But yeah, one thing that definitely made me laugh, and this is my cynicism shining through. All the talk about the human spirit, how humans are so great, how the doctor was able to withstand the mind wipe because he thought of the Beatles and Shakespeare. And I was actually really like, that was just silly, because no, a person's not going to survive that. But also, it would have been really interesting if they had let his memory be wiped. That would have made for a really interesting turn in the
Mhm.
film. But I digress. But
No,
yeah,
you're right.
all the talk about the triumph of the human spirit, that did make me laugh a little bit, because I'm just a cynical person these days.
That was like that early '80s optimism. It's like, yeah,
Oh yeah.
we're gonna go. But the funny thing you mentioned that is because when I was watching the movie and that scene come where they were wiping his mind, I'm like, huh, I don't remember this, and I thought Dr. Zarkov was, part of their their gang of heroes the whole movie. So I was all ready for the plot to take me into that direction because I had no memory of any of that. And then it cuts to that scene where him and Dale are on the bike and he's like, they didn't wipe my memory. They thought they did, but look at me. I got my memory. And that was another laugh out loud moment because like you, I thought they were going to go there and it was going to be like, oh, somehow we got to restore Zarkov's memory so we can get home or something. I don't, because I did not remember the plot. And the fact that they did that and then just retconned it and the next scene was hilarious.
Yeah. The whole sequence is hilarious because Flash and the princess, like they see this happening, and Flash is like, "Oh no, we got to save Zarkov," and she's like, "No, they're just acclimatizing him to our, getting him used to our climate or environment or whatever, our atmosphere," and you find out very soon after that's not what they're doing. So it's like, why would she say that? And then I don't know if you remember this part. But that whole big laser beam, I mean, the whole scene is straight out of like a Bond film.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all the way down to where the laser starts out pointed at the Doctor's junk. So that's what I'm thinking they're doing. I'm like, oh God, is this going to be, Goldfinger all over again? Obviously it wasn't, but that's where my brain was going when I first saw that. I was like, oh, we're going to go there, huh?
100%. That is exactly what I thought when they framed it exactly like the Goldfinger, and I was like, yeah, they're gonna do that gag, okay. And then no, they went to his brain.
Oh yeah, and then you had the fight later on with the princess and Dale and all the girls in the concubine or like I kind of wondered if they had the time and the not PG rating. Where would that fight have actually ended? Because they were it definitely came across like we were kind of hoping that it was going to be flipped and that turn into a little something.
And as a 8-year-old watching this, all that went over my head. I thought they were having a pillow fight.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I'm curious. Like, is there any like sequence or scene or moment or anything like this that stands out at you after watching this that particularly resonated with you after this most recent watch? Is there anything you watch and like, okay, that part was pretty good. I like that. Can you think of anything like that?
Oh, like I would say the thing that sticks out to me the most is the fact that they pulled off a film that size with, I don't know if Flash Gordon was a big budget film or not. I think it was like a $20 million budget, which for 1980 is really good. I like that they, as cheesy as the effects are, I really like that they pulled it off and were able to at least maybe not fully capture the scope of what they were aiming for, but they absolutely, did not miss the mark by much. Like I would say that it was a solid, they did a very solid job, just with the scope of the whole thing, which I really liked. And the other thing about Flash Gordon is that thing moves. It's about a 2-hour film, but it does not stop to smell the roses, and that's really good. So even if you're caught in a scene that's a little bit more silly than others, I'll point out the whole Timothy Dalton and Sam Jones sticking their hands in that tree trunk portion. Mm-hmm. Because it moves along so quickly, I think that's part of its charm is you don't really have a chance to just sit there and be like, like, what are we watching? Like, because the momentum is just so there that it's masks a lot of the deficiencies that it may have.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I really enjoyed the Birdman battle at the end. There was something about that I just like. Of course, it was back in the day. Their wings are static. They're not flapping like they're not like today you do a CGI wing and all that. I like the idea of them flying in. They got these lasers and things are blowing up and there's these sparks and squibs and stuff going off. And I think, for a campy, just kind of off the wall movie, that worked for me. I just had fun with that. It kind of reminded me of, going back to Bond, if you remember the Moonraker movie where they were out there with jetpacks and lasers at the end and everybody was battling. It kind of felt reminiscent of that to me. So I don't know if they took inspiration from that and when they were doing that sequence or not. It kind of feels like there were little traces of that throughout. So
Yeah, I really like that sequence too, and just the effects work. I really like it. I really like that old school effect of like painting the effects on the frames, like they did for that scene to convey the whole size of the bird army. I really enjoy those kind of old school effects, and apart from like the first two waves of the bird people essentially just being cannon fodder, I did very much enjoy that whole sequence.
Yeah, you got a point. They just were like, here, you go and absorb all the lasers, and then we'll come in and save the day. It was such a fun, like you said, well paced. Sit back and enjoy. Don't expect Shakespeare. Don't expect anything too big. Enjoy the colors. Enjoy the big sets. Enjoy the lasers. If you can do that, then this movie is certainly one you can throw on and have fun with. You got any other like kind of overall impressions?
I agree with you. It's definitely extremely campy, and so like for me personally, like for something like that, you almost kind of have to be in the mood to want to watch it. It's very well made. It's a lot of fun, and it's probably even more fun if you're in the kind of frame of mind where those colors really pop. Yeah. It's absolutely worth a watch. It's not it's not a bad film. It's not a failure. It's just a really fun, cheesy space opera that pretty much knows exactly what it is, and that's what it's going for. And I would say it's on the whole, it's a successful film, especially for what it's aiming to be.
Excellent. Yeah, I totally agree. And I don't think I could have put it any better myself. This is our movie, Flash Gordon. If you have any questions or thoughts or comments, let us know down in the comments section. Fun, cheesy movie, and I enjoyed watching it, and I enjoyed talking with you, Ryan, about it. Ryan is the author of the Book of Bart series. I have the first book here, the Book of Bart. I've read it. It's really good. Ryan, you want to give us a little bit of information about this book?
Sure. Well, first, thank you for the kind words. The Book of Bart is kind of a fish out of water tale about a demon who's down on his luck, and he has to he's forced to work with an angel in training to recover a very powerful relic that gives whoever holds it omnipotence. And it basically they end up having to go undercover at high school. Lots of hijinks, lots of fun. I would the best comparison I can make to it is Neil Gaiman's Good Omens. I certainly wouldn't put it up on that level, but in terms of just having fun with the whole good and evil dynamic, that's where the Book of Bart kind of lies. It's just a lot of fun and sarcasm and snark, and just a good old fashioned time. And then there are two more after it, and I've also written a short, and I'm hoping later this year to release the fourth book in the series, Murder Bart Wrote, which I'm not gonna lie, Flash Gordon cribs from Star Wars. Murder Bart Wrote is cribbing from Knives Out. I was watching Glass Onion and thought it'd be really cool if this was with monsters, not Muppets, but monsters. So that's gonna be my next book.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to that. Check out the Book of Bart series. I will have a link in the notes below to Ryan's Amazon page. Check it out. It's good stuff. I really enjoyed it. All right, Ryan, thanks a lot for jumping on today to talk about Flash Gordon. I had a good time. I hope you did as well. And we really appreciate it.
Thank you, George. I had a great time talking about Flash Gordon. Hope to do it again sometime.
Awesome. Absolutely. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. And until the next time, have a good one.